All right. Welcome back to Common Sense Conversations. I'm Eric.
I'm Matt.
And we're excited to be back. Matt, I just had this experience yesterday. I was meeting with this business owner and had a great conversation. And we were there for about an hour, and great guy. Really enjoyed our meeting, our time together. And he told me about how things are going for his business. And
what kind of business is it?
It is a like health supplements type industry. And I think it was started by his dad. And his dad started it, grew pretty steadily. And then he took over like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
And last year they grew by 30%, which was big number, right? This year they're projected to grow by 100%.
Wow.
By the end of the year. So they have about 10, 12 employees now. I wouldn't be surprised if they have 50 employees by next year, right? So growing fast, great company, great products. He told me all about the products, and they've really invested a lot of time and energy into making sure that it's growing. But here's the thing, the reason why they're growing so fast, right? And this is how he explained it to me, is that number one, he has all of his employees listen to and participate in this personal development, motivational type program every morning.
Wow.
And they are tied to it. If they falter from that, so they have to report by 8:30 every morning that they've listened to. It's about 25 minutes worth of personal development videos that they watch, right? Every single morning. He said the first time that they don't listen to it, or that they don't report by 8:30, it's a verbal warning. Second time's a written warning. Third time they're out of a job, right? And that's how serious they are about this personal development. He said that the other thing that he does is he's gotten on board a team that helps him out, right? And so this team, he pays. We're talking about thousands of dollars. He spent I want to say like $10,000, $12,000 for one training. Spent $35,000 for another training. So these are big numbers, obviously. He'd go down, get this training, and he said this one time that he was sweating bullets, right? Like, oh man, is this really gonna pan out? I just spent $12,000 for this training. Is it really gonna work out? And he said within the first week he had already made that back, implementing what they taught him, right?
Wow.
And I thought, how relevant is that to what we do? Where let me kind of switch gears here and tell you about another experience I had yesterday, same day. I hired a new guy in Burley, right? And great guy. Had a great time sitting down with him, talking with him, great conversation. He's been in our industry, in my industry specifically, for about 18 years. So he's in his 60s, wants to work for the next 10 years at least. I mean, just really a go-getter, works really hard, has a great reputation in the with what he did previously. But one thing that he told me was that he does a good job. So I'm not saying anything bad about this. But one thing that he told me was, look, all that I need from you, because I was going to be the manager, right?
Sure.
So he said, the only thing that I really need from you is product information. I can do the rest. I can take care of everything else, right? So you take that. I mean, I'm sure he'll do great. He'll do okay. He'll go out and he'll open up some groups. But you take the two and compare and contrast, right? Here's on the first hand a guy that probably knew what he was doing, also, right? I mean, he grew up watching his dad do it, and knew what he's doing, and but still spends all this money, all this time and effort in developing his team and developing his own understanding, his own approach to the industry, and going from 1 year 30% increase to 100% increase, which are much bigger than it's ever been before, right? Versus someone who said, no, I've been doing this, I know what I'm doing, right? Yep. And so I think that's really where we come in strong, is that number one, we don't charge anything to come in, to help people see how we can help them out. But the second thing is that when we sit down with somebody, we sit down with people all the time who say, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been investing in this way for 20 years. I've been, so on and so forth. I kind of know what I'm doing, or I feel like I understand how to be financially responsible, and so on and so forth, right?
Yep.
And the thing that kind of sets us apart, I believe, is that we show them a different way, a better way, right? We've heard the quote, good is the better, or good is the enemy of better. No, wait. How does it go?
Good enough is the enemy of best, something like that. I don't remember.
Good. Better is. Anyway, good is the enemy of better. Better the enemy of best. Right. I think is how it goes.
Okay.
So the idea is that if you think that you're good, then why get better? Because hey, I'm good, right? I'm doing good. And if you get better, then you think, oh well, I just got better. I'm doing better. So now it's the enemy of best, because now you're not working towards being your best, right?
Yep.
And I think that there's always something that we can learn, always things that maybe we didn't consider before. And that's really where, when I came on board with you and saw what you did, my big concern was, hey, I've kind of been doing this financial thing for quite a while. I had my own way of doing it, and I felt like I understood it pretty well. Mm-hmm. And so I'll say I was a little resistant at first, but then once I read the books, once I saw what was really happening behind the scenes, once I understood the reason behind what was going on, right? Once I understood what was going on, what do you always say? When you understand?
When you know what's happening, you'll know what to do.
When you know what's happening, you'll know what to do. So once I saw that, once I found out what was happening, it changed my mindset, as my mindset has been changed many times before. And that's, I think, the human condition, right? Is learning how to adapt and change our mindset to adjust to new information provided and gathered so that we can prepare for a better future.
Yep.
So
I think in most industries, there are consequences that are seen that maybe a person doesn't know how to protect themselves against. And then there are consequences that are unseen. And I'd like to think that we can help people address or see things in both areas and know what to do about them. You talk about approaching somebody who knows what they're doing and them having a hard time being open to new ideas. Years ago, 4 to 5 years ago, in Pocatello, I was just going business to business. I hadn't been teaching the infinite banking concept for very long, and I found myself more comfortable teaching the concept to blue-collar types of business owners. And so heating and air conditioning, or plumbers, or the guys who maybe grew up in the business, they were out there getting their hands dirty, and it seemed like they had a connection with their money because they were out there in the muck and the mire earning it. And also, probably, they were more approachable for me at the time. Plaid shirts and blue jeans, a little easier to talk to that guy than the guy who's, maybe a CEO of a large company, right?
Right.
So anyway, one gentleman I spoke to, this has stuck with me, his response has stuck with me partly because he felt so strongly about it, and the words that he said. He grew up in this business. His dad owned the business and grew up in it, and he was in his probably late 40s at the time, and looked me right in the eyes and said, I know everything I need to know about this business. There's nothing you can teach me. I said, okay, then there is nothing that I can teach you.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the truth.
That's the self-fulfilling prophecy.
And I wished him, he does a great job with his business too. That's the sad part. Or it's a great thing. He's very good at what he does and has a great reputation for it. And I always wished and hoped that at some point down the road, maybe a friend of his, when they're hunting or out on the golf course or something, a friend would say, hey, so I read this book the other day. And anyway, but it's hard to reach some people. Fortunately, there are many, many people in the world. And a lot of those people want help, or they just are looking for ways to keep more of the money they make. Or they're just looking for a way to manage their money that's different than what their parents and grandparents did. And there's a lot of you out there, and we appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully a lot of this makes sense to you. And if you know that guy, maybe introduce me to him again sometime down the road. And so Doug was just telling us about, let's talk about that for a minute, this friend that Doug was telling us about.
Yeah, so telling us about this guy who worked in the solar industry for many years and developed, he was good at what he did, right?
Really good, apparently.
Yeah, great, had a great income, upwards of $300,000 a year, right? Really doing well for himself, and then the pandemic hits, right? So now, given the state of the economy, he was no longer able to go out and do what he's been doing.
And his business was, his contacting was all door to door.
Oh yeah,
right.
He could not do any of that anymore. He was basically out of luck. Went from the 300,000 range to zero.
Yeah,
right?
Completely unexpected. Who would think that a virus would make that happen, right?
Right. And I think, we a lot of us tuning in might say, oh well, 300,000. How does that apply to me? That's not my situation. I'm not making it anywhere close to that, or maybe I am, or maybe I'm making more than that. The point isn't how much he made before. The point is the strategy that we use sometimes in life, and how we did things before, and how maybe we can change that mindset to prepare for a better future. Because I think we all know, deep down, for some of us, I think we all know that our future is not going to be anywhere close to where our past has been. I think that given the national debt, we always have, generally, usually we have the debt clock going, right? Given the national debt and everything else that's happening with our economy, and where, of course, the Democrats are taking the economy.
Last time I think you said something about Democrats as well. I wasn't going to jump in then, but I'm going to jump in now because I saw this meme that just had me rolling almost. And man, I hope I can remember this. I think that it was a picture of a ship in an ocean with just waves crashing all over the place. And we literally had a Democrat and a Republican in this little cartoon arguing about which direction to move the ship, even though these waves are crashing over the not talking at all about, and then this guy over here named Joe Public or something, he's over here with this little bucket tossing water out of the ship, and we've got Democrats and Republicans arguing about which direction to turn the ship or to point the ship to get wherever the heck they're going, but neither one of those two individuals is talking about all the water coming overboard, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, whether we've had a Republican president in the White House or a Democrat president in the White House, that national debt has done what it has been doing for the last 20 years.
And that's true. And I guess I reference Democrats because
Republicans can suck too.
Yeah. And that's currently we have a Democratic presidency, right? Administration. And so that's why I reference that. And I think that, honestly, I think that when Democrats are in office, it's a little bit more visible. I think we can see.
Unless you hate the military complex.
Yeah.
When Republicans are in the office, a lot of Democrats out there would say that we're spending X number of dollars on
That's true.
on the war that a lot of people would say is absolutely 100% unneeded.
That's true. And I think you're absolutely right. I think looking at
it'll be fun to argue this someday though, because I'm a pretty staunch, politically speaking, a pretty conservative libertarian, if there is such a thing. But my gosh, from the numbers, from an economic standpoint, I look at what the parties have done. We're going to have to detour here for just a minute. But from an economic standpoint, looking at what both parties have done, there is so much incredible waste and overfunding of so many different things. And so President Bush, bless his heart, President Obama, bless his heart too, they all overspend like nothing. In fact, when one of the videos that you might see linked in our channels and stuff is a video made in 2008 by the previous Comptroller General. And in this video, he leaves his office as Comptroller General, goes on tour around the United States. What was that news station? There used to be what was that, that news program that had a ticking clock? Doug, do you recall what it was, 60 Minutes? No.
Yeah, 60 Minutes.
Okay, thank you. They interviewed him and put out they released like an 11-minute video of this interview with him. And in that video, he identifies these various programs, these various spending bills that increase the debt. In 10 years, he's yelling at Congress and the president saying, we don't have the money to do this. Doesn't matter who's in office, we haven't got the money to do this. And specifically, one of the things he mentions was the Part D Medicare program, the part of Medicare that pays for prescription drugs. President Bush wrote that into law in 2004, I think it was. Literally, when he signed that bill, he added $8 trillion to our debt. It just wasn't there. He says, we're going to pay for all this stuff, and we don't have the money to do it right now, but it's somehow going to come from somewhere in the future. So, okay, get back to bashing Democrats. That's all I got to say.
I mean, to my point.
And bash them, they're guilty too.
Yeah, no, I think that we are all guilty, as far as the parties go.
Not all of us, they are.
Well, some more than most. Anyway, the Democrats.
I don't know how you're going to edit some of this stuff out. But.
So anyway, the point that I was making is that I do think that it is more visible with the Democrats in office. I just get scared at some of the things that they propose.
Sure.
And I can just see it.
I'm going to add one more thing, maybe one more thing. When we take the extreme Democrats who are self-proclaimed socialists,
which is basically our administration,
right? Some of you Democrats out there, bless your hearts, we love a lot of you, and some of the others, straight up socialists. I was talking to a friend in Venezuela 2 nights ago, okay, and I used to teach Spanish class with her, okay. And video conference makes this possible. Anyway, she asks how things are going, and I don't remember how we got on the topic. I must have been upset about some political thing, but she kind of brings things up. Extremely difficult situation in Venezuela right now, and has been for some time. And she's trying to get out of the country, and we're talking about how things are in various other countries. And I made a comment about things that I see happening here, and I was in Venezuela 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Before things really started to collapse, but just at the beginning of the collapse, if you will. We have a much larger economy, much larger country, period. We are extremely flexible in our ability to move as a country and bolster our economy in other ways, whereas Venezuela was reliant upon less goods and services, if you will, than what we have access to, okay? So the crash came faster. Anyway, I said something about things not being so peachy here. I'm seeing some stuff here that I saw there 20 years ago and have seen, frankly, over the last 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. And you talk about people who are in office and things that are being said by the people who are in control and the policies that are being pushed, the ideas they're throwing out there. So you say it's more visible when Democrats are in office, and a Democrat will say it's more visible when a Republican is in office. From somebody who has been following Venezuela for the last 20 years, I don't care who's in office, it is visible. And the slope that we're sliding down is right there in front of me in a lot of ways. And I hate it. It scares the crap out of me. So now please continue. I'll turn that back over to you.
All right, so going back to our guy.
Yep.
To our guy, was making $300,000 a year.
Yep.
Then went down to zero. Now he's projected, as far as I understand it, and talking with Doug, he's projected to get back to where he was possibly within a year, right? Go take a year, get back to where it was. But the problem was, as we understand it, accessibility to funds during that time that he couldn't work, right? So he's been living this lifestyle and having a great lifestyle at that, making sufficient for his needs for sure, to a point that he wasn't making anything. Mm-hmm. And now building it up again. So I think that the point is, the takeaway here is, what happens in the future when, not if, but when this happens again. It might not be a pandemic, might be the national debt causes the economy to crash, or it might be some other thing, right?
Sure.
But what happens when, what do we do to prepare for financially a time when this happens again?
Such a great question. And that question,
It's being pretty quiet for a train.
it is. Just a couple little horn toots, right? Toot, toot. Normally they kind of lay on it. That guy's genteel. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like he's going through pretty quick too.
Yeah. You know the crazy thing? We can feel that.
You can feel it?
Do you not feel it?
Like the,
Put your hand on the table.
yeah, no, I feel it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how far that is, 250, 300 yards. Well, a little closer here than at the angle, but literally across a 4-lane street with a median, so call it 5 lanes, and then, I don't know, 50 feet of grass, right? And we feel the train. It's kind of cool.
A lot of weight, a lot of pressure. And
Tons.
he's going slow.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going very slow.
I think we could say tons of weight and not exaggerate in the least.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it sounds like the horn is passed.
Yeah. So, talking about this guy and how to prepare and how people can prepare for all these various situations. For the last 5-ish years or whatever, I've been actively involved 100% of my time in this business, teaching people how to prepare for something. And nobody, none of my clients ever said, hey, this will be great for when that virus hits. Not a single one of them ever mentioned a virus. We talk about all kinds of natural disasters. In fact, interesting little side note, if I may, have another little side note. If any of you are in southern Utah or are curious to look it up, you can find news stories from the last time that the Virgin River overran its banks. Southern Utah, St. George, the Virgin River goes through St. George, if I remember correctly. Years ago, they started building homes up on, well, maybe you'd call them the banks of the Virgin River as it cut through the earth, and it's down there pretty low. Not a lot of water runs through that canyon anymore. And so people are building homes up on the edge. It's pretty if you like the color red and orange, and if you like to look at it when it's 105 degrees outside, then it's a really nice place to live. And I know people, my grandmother, who I love, lives down there part-time. So anyway, the Virgin River flooded some number of years ago, 12 to 20-ish years ago, somewhere in there. Because it had been so long since that had happened, people didn't have flood insurance, even though technically they were living in a floodplain, but it literally had been 80 or 100 years or something since it had flooded, okay? So people didn't carry insurance. They didn't even think about that. Now, when it came through, it's bad news when your house floods. A lot of us may have had a minor flood because sewer or the water line going to the refrigerator or something like that. Sprinklers come in, whatever. We have a lot of basements in Idaho, that stuff happens. And we have insurance to protect some of that. If you're in a floodplain, maybe your house still gets flooded and the water gets drained out and maybe you can still restore your house, okay? When this happened in this area though, when the Virgin River came through and flooded, it literally washed the dirt downstream, the dirt that the homes were sitting on. So people lost their houses, people lost the dirt their house was on. Okay? How in the world do you get that back?
Have to bring in more dirt.
You don't get it back.
Yeah.
You don't build up from the bottom of the river and create another 60 feet up top. You don't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Everything was washed downstream. The houses, the dirt that it was on, and a lot of folks didn't have insurance. So that's something completely unexpected for a lot of people. Other people may have said, hey, that's something that you might expect. I'm not going to build a house there. Okay? Do you guys happen to know the property values in Hawaii?
High?
High. A lot of people say high. Do you know the property values on the large island? Low. You could buy an acre of land in Hawaii for $5,000 to $10,000 probably. In Hawaii, on the Big Island, Guess why?
Because of tsunamis or...
Big Island is where the active volcano is. Okay? And even though, and when you buy land, they grade it 3 different zones, I think they call it, zone 1, 2, and 3. Is how likely you are to have lava in your backyard someday. Okay? We don't deal with that here. But people who buy property in zone 1 feel pretty safe. But it's not something that you can really predict. We avoid living somewhere where it's likely we are flooded, where it's likely our house is going to be hit by lava, where it's we avoid living in those places, right? Mm-hmm. And we avoid living a life that is affected to this extent by a virus. But it's not something we expect, it's not something we plan for. But without knowing it, I've been helping my clients prepare for a virus for 4 years by the time the virus hit. Yep. And the people who had money someplace safe where they had access to it, they were so extremely grateful. They thought they were going to use that money to buy a car, to fund business expenses, vacations, to fund their retirement. That was the plan. But gosh, when a virus comes along, the money worked for that too. It's pretty handy. Mm-hmm. It wasn't earmarked for any one specific thing. And I kind of like to poke fun at Congress a little bit, or the government in general, but specifically when they had to pass legislation as part of the, I think it was part of the Secure Act, when they passed legislation to allow Americans to have access to their 401ks, it literally took an act of Congress for the American people to get their hands on their money. Okay, and so I like to talk to the American people about keeping their money someplace where it doesn't take an act of Congress to get your hands on it. Whether it's a virus or to buy a motorcycle or anything else. That's my whole plan. And so this guy is now recovering from the dip, the extreme dip to his personal budget due to the pandemic, right? And now he's discussing how to rebuild his life, how to maybe plan better for next time, right? Mm-hmm. Simple picture that I share with everybody, whether it's a picture you see because I share a video with you. We should put a link to this video. I've got it on my YouTube channel. We can do that. This
and
simple
promote world peace at the same time.
And promote world peace. Yeah. If I had a van, this would be drawn on the side of it. You got me pegged. Having access to your own money actually promotes world peace also. So if this circle represents all the wealth we have at a given time in various places, then we can break that wealth into 3 categories. We're going to label this, and it's not split evenly, by the way, but we're going to label this savings, lifestyle money, and then the final one that people don't think about as much as the others, excuse the handwriting, is transferred money. So, really simply put, I would tell this guy and everybody else that we all should have savings. A lot of people are familiar with the 10-20-70 rule of budget management, if you will. And I don't care how you do it, but a person ought to be saving money. And frankly, I can't work with somebody who's not disciplined enough to save money or who just doesn't earn enough to have savings. You know, the truth of it is there is a need for welfare programs. Widows and orphans is kind of how that started out, and there's a need for it. I'm glad that it's out there. Those people are not our clients, right?
Right.
So the people who are earning $300,000 a year, and they want to know where to save the money they are already disciplined enough to save. That's the other thing. My father and mentor has a client whose wife loves credit cards. And they have sat down as a team multiple times and cut up credit cards. And this client of my father's cannot save more money. He just can't. He wants desperately to save more money for the future. He knows what the national debt looks like. He sees numbers and says, wow, big numbers. His wife says numbers, says, hey, savings. And they've cut out credit cards a handful of times, and she keeps getting more. So some people just aren't built for it, designed for it, for whatever reason. Call them shopaholics or whatever. But we have to be disciplined enough to save. Anyway,
and when we just to clarify that, $300,000 is not who we're looking for as exclusively as a client, right? We're looking for somebody who makes $300,000 versus somebody that makes $75,000 could both be saving the same amount of money.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, a saver could be somebody who's very disciplined, making $50,000, $75,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and a lot of that depends on where they live and where they are in life.
Right.
I met a guy, a business owner yesterday, who is the oldest boy out of 14 kids. He's in his late 20s. He and his family run multiple businesses. He doesn't have any yet. I don't know if the gene skips a generation or something, but his parents had 14 kids. So if they're earning $50,000 a year, $75,000 a year, a lot of that is going to the food bill, right? Somebody else earning $75,000 a year with 2.7 kids might have an easier time saving money. And a lot of that is also dependent upon where we live. I love one of the reasons, we're not going to tell you where because we don't need more people to move here, but one of the reasons people do move here is because the cost of living is so low until they all start moving here. It's no longer cheap to live here. But so much of our budget is dependent upon where we live. But there are some things we can absolutely control if we're disciplined enough to do it.
Yeah.
So I can teach a person the importance of saving money. And then I can maybe help them without being too nosy or too intrusive. If they want help to live on rice and beans for a while and really sock away a lot of money, cut back on their lifestyle spending, maybe sometimes they have to move into a different home. A lot of people faced tough choices during the pandemic because they couldn't afford the lifestyle they had before. So all of us know that we can save more than we want. We just want to spend money and have fun with it, right? I've got a motorcycle that I don't need by any means, but I sure enjoy it, and I haven't traded that motorcycle for money because therapy costs more than a motorcycle. That's what they say.
And I have six kids that are costing me a lot of money, but my wife won't let me trade those away, so we're kind of stuck with that expense.
You are. You're stuck with that expense. So something we can focus on, and everybody wants to change, is how much money is transferred out of their circle of wealth. And a lot of that money is transferred out because of non-deductible interest and taxes, but there are some other ways we also unknowingly and unnecessarily transfer money out of our circle of wealth. So my job is to take a close look at that, and then if I can, I want to take some of that transferred wealth and combine it up here with your lifestyle. So you have more to spend on your lifestyle, more to keep for yourself, however you want to use it. Maybe somebody wants to take some of that transferred wealth and move it into their savings. And I applaud you for doing that. After looking at the national debt, frankly, more people do that and they don't go buy a second boat or a second set of four-wheelers or something of that nature. We want to make sure we have enough for when that hits. And one lesson I think we should all take away from the pandemic is the need to save money someplace where we can get access to it.
Can I give you one example?
Absolutely.
Not related to the pandemic, but another good example as to both why we need the money and the importance of transferable wealth. And he was fighting a legal battle, a pretty hefty legal battle. And what had happened is that his parents had passed away.
Oh.
And they were on Medicaid. And they had a pretty substantial ranch, right? A lot of land, some ranch, things like that.
Yep.
Medicaid was coming after all of it.
Yep.
Right? Because he was on Medicaid. A lot of people don't realize that Medicaid places a lien on property. When somebody dies, if they're on Medicaid, then it's a pretty...
They collect on the money they pay out on their behalf. Yep.
Which could be a lot, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so they were looking at taking just about everything. Everything that would have been transferred to the children, and the son was working with an attorney to fight it But he basically told me, I was looking at paying possibly as much in legal fees as I was in what the amount is that I'd be getting back. So he's like, you know what, that's okay. If all that I get back is winning a battle and I don't get anything financial, I'm okay with that because this is something that needs to be fought. But the point is that they'd put the land into the son's name 3 years prior, right? And the parents, of course, passed away a little bit sooner than expected. And it's a 5-year time frame. So Medicaid looks back 5 years and says, okay, if you haven't, if something was transferred out of the name in 5 years, that's still fair game, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. If he had done what we teach, if there were a way to go back 10 years and say, look, let's restructure this so that transference of money, whether it's while you're alive or after, could happen a lot easier. If it's makes it much more accessible. Yep. Anyway, so it just made me think about how many times do things like this happen? Whether it's a pandemic, whether it's Medicaid or any other type of government program. And this is Medicaid, but there's tons of government programs out there that we could take a look at. So anyway, there's lots of different scenarios here where having that conversation early helps out.
I would agree. We can't protect ourselves against everything, and we don't predict what's going to happen. But there are certain financial vehicles that have, just because of the way they're designed, that have additional protections that we don't find in other financial vehicles.
Yeah.
And just for that reason alone, those financial vehicles should be a part of a person's portfolio, part of a person's plan and their strategies, right? So, on that very sad note, we are just about out of time.
Yeah, there's our out of time buzzer.
Yeah, I think I heard. There it goes again. As much as I love this office, I don't know if we've shared this with our audience, but the office that I started renting a couple of years ago is right on the corner in downtown Blackfoot, Idaho. And corner property is a great place to be, and it's nice to be downtown. The reason I chose this property, though, is because it's an old bank. And if I'm talking to people about becoming their own banker, I thought, how nice would that be to be sitting in a bank? And so we have this really nice, beautiful building downtown, and 200 yards away from us are the train tracks. It was a bank, and I thought, cool. I didn't think a whole lot about doing videos in the building 2 years later with trains and motorcycles outside. So anyway, in case that doesn't get cut out, there's the explanation.
Talking about preparing for the future.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I didn't see that coming. I guess I could put up some insulation that might insulate me against that. Next time, just really quick, one of these times, really, the next one or the one after that, we've got to have a session and bring back the Mathemagician and talk specifically to business owners again about how to apply these principles within their business to capture overhead expenses and limit tax liability. So if you're scrolling through videos or waiting for that to come up, specifically look for those words: recapturing overhead expenses and limiting your tax liability. These strategies apply so well for business owners. Business owners also have money that they have to transfer out of their business, and we can help you recapture some of that transferred money that's going out of your business every month, every year, and put that back in your pocket.
All right, thanks for joining us. And we look forward to meeting again next week.
Heck yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.